どうしたんだい？
おばあちゃん、ありがとう。お別れパーティー、カレーも作ったんだ。みんなで準備したんだよ。
あれまあ、私のために？
これまでお世話になったしね。お別れは寂しいけど、今日は思い。
Episode number 34 of Pokemon Horizons, and this show just kind of keeps on keeping on. And like what I mean by that is the quality that keeps getting outputted by this show still ends up being at a very, very high rate. Now, with episode 34, the reason I love this episode quite a bit is we're always looking at Pokemon Horizons from like the angle of like, well, what is it? The big thing, right, is we love Pokemon, we love Pokemon battling, we love Pokemon catching, we love the world of Pokemon, right? That's like the general view of it is we love the world of Pokemon and the little inherent things that go along with it, like Pokemon catching and battling and stuff like that, okay? That's the big thing. But on a deeper level, the thing that I love about Pokemon is typically the lessons that it teaches you or reminds you of, right? I think if you're a kid, it teaches you certain lessons. I think if you're older, it reminds you of said lessons that you learned when you were a kid or when you were a young adult or whatever it was. Like you have these different emotional journeys with the show. Now, let me tell you about episode 34. I think that episode 34, there was a really tinge, like a sprinkle of sadness this episode, for two main reasons. Now, one, because Grandma is obviously leaving the show to go on her own adventures. But the real sadness, the real emotionality, the real emotion of the show was how sad Liko was. And this made me think about a real life thing, right? Is Liko said something very important. Now, after they partied and they said bye and she understands, but it's still, you have to remember that Liko is 10 to 12 years old, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know if they ever explicitly say, maybe they explicitly say she's 10 or something, but she's 10, 11, 12 years. She's really small. She's a baby, right? So what do you think about that? She said something really important of like, Roy was like, oh, she's leaving us. And she was like, oh, well, Grandma always does this. Like, this is just her thing. And that's where that tinge of sadness came in is I personally never really went through this myself. I had like uncles or aunts who would do disappearing acts through my childhood. But thankfully, the core people in my life, the core parents in my life, they were always there. Okay. And that's like, I was very blessed like that. But I also had a lot of different, friends throughout my childhood who did have situations like this to where they were having a core person in their life, a grandma, a grandpa, a dad, a mom, who would be these, disappearing acts. And they take a similar thought process like Liko did here of like, oh, well, that's just how they are. They're always like that. They're always gone. But it's just so sad for, a child, for like somebody that important to have always just been gone, right? Of course, she's the grandparent, not the mother or the father, but still having them around more than less is a great thing for a kid. So that's just one thing was like, oh, there's just like a tinge of sadness there when Liko was speaking. She's like, oh, this is just how Grandma always is. She's just always appearing. And Roy's like, oh, okay, let's throw a party then. So I like how they, they immediately like they said this really sad thing, but then they kind of overcame it by the party stuff. But it was still there, and I was just like, wow, okay, that was kind of like a sadness piece of it. The second thing is, again, that lesson that it teaches us that is really, really valuable. And Liko said it best when she was talking to her grandma, and her grandma was, giving her like the adventure logs that she's had throughout the year and stuff. And she was talking about like, I really thank you, thanks for everything you did. I'm so glad I listened to you. And this was Liko speaking. She was like, taking that first step is the hardest, but after it's been such a blast, such an experience that I would never have had. And she thanks her grandma for that. But the lesson is in life, when you want to do or try something, taking that first step, making that first effort, that first jumping into the pool. Like that's the hardest part. What comes after is easy. It's getting over that hump. And you can really push, that's an unlimited narrative where there's always going to be something that comes into your life that is, you have to make that first jump. Like me creating here on YouTube, right? Or putting out a different type of video. Or in my work life, having some kind of like project and taking that first stab at it. Like there's always going to be something, even a mundane thing, that's always going to take a lot of effort to make that first step. So it's like, oh, that's another awesome thing. Then you kind of cast the rest of the episode of this big departure and, grandma leaving, and they threw a party for her, and Dot is coming out of her shell. Ayano called Dot, and she was like, oh, now that you're a trainer, blah, blah, are you enjoying being a trainer? And as Dot was looking at Roy and Liko, Ayana was like, okay, great, I got my answer. I already know the answer here, because like you could tell Dot went from somebody who was very, what do they call it? She was very to herself, she was an extrovert, she's introverted. So she's a very introverted individual. And the lesson isn't to change her to an extroverted individual. It's to bring people in to her introversion and be okay with that and understand that that's who she is, and they will kind of work around that, right? So I love that this also shows that it's okay to be yourself, even if you are like an introverted individual. It's making sure that you build the right friendships and relationships with others, that they will understand this is how you are as an individual, and they won't try and force you to be something you're not. And you can see that over and over again, how Roy and Liko keep coming to Dot. They don't expect her to come to them at all, right? They keep coming to her, and they keep stepping into her world. So that's the first, kind of really show of like, if you're friends, if you're friends, they will understand. You know what I mean? Like if you're important to somebody, they will understand and have you be important to them. And you being important to them is them kind of molding around the things. So it's like a give and take. So I love that. And then when they had the party, they gave her kudos for making the video. They brought her into the party, still allowing her to be on the Rotom phone. So all these little things of that show, especially kids, right? They show kids like it's okay to be yourself. And if the people around you don't understand you, or, it's okay to like, those are not your friends, but the ones who are the ones who are going to understand you. So they're like, that's a beautiful thing. So I love that too. Very last thing I'll say, because I'm taking up a lot of time this week, is 𝐒𝐚𝐧𝐻𝐸 and our villains, right? So sweet these villains are. Of course, there is some big Zordon, big, guy in the sky, calling the shots, who has some evilistic type plans. Of course there is. But 𝐒𝐴𝐚𝐽𝐻𝐸 and this group, right? When they talked about him getting more power and like all this stuff, I was like, oh, they're about to hook boy up with like a Lugia, or like, an Arceus, or, like a Palkia or a Dialga or something, like a Darkrai. They're about to hook bro up with some legendary mythical Pokemon. Nah. What they meant by more power is just bro trading. He's just trading there. He's just like, making himself stronger with his partner Pokemon and, all this stuff. And then they're learning how to terrestrialize, and terrestrializing is the next way forward to get him more power. And it was just so cute and so innocent of like, more power doesn't mean like the Team Rocket days when they give him like an infinite gotcha machine of Pokemon that they can just keep chucking out, Tyranitar and Gyarados and this. No, they meant like training and like really putting in effort and work, and then taking another thing to make them better and master that. That's them getting more power. Like, that's so cute. So anyways, I love this episode. I thought it was so good. Not only from all the different lessons, not only from the emotion, the underlying emotion that was there if you're looking for it or notice it. Not only for the villains kind of being not only for the villains being villains, but them having a sense of you can have something in common with them, and you can see like they mean well. They're choosing evil, but they mean well by doing it. So it's like, oh, it's so cute. Anyways, awesome episode. We'll see you guys next week for episode 35. Peace out, friends.